Welcome to NeoEnglish, the podcast where we help you learn practical English for everyday conversations.
Yes, and today's episode is all about a recent news event from the world of Formula One. Russell and Antonelli hit with grid penalties in Bahrain.
That sounds interesting, but maybe confusing if you're new to English or Formula One. Stick with us. We'll break it down in simple language.
Okay, let's begin with the news. Mercedes drivers George Russell and Kimi Antonelli received one-place grid penalties in the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Why?
Because they broke a rule during the qualifying session on Saturday.
Now, don't worry if some of those words are unfamiliar. Let's go one by one. First, what is a grid penalty?
A grid penalty happens in racing when a driver is punished by starting the race in a lower position on the starting grid. For example, if a driver qualifies in third place but gets a one-place grid penalty, they will start in fourth place.
Right. So the phrase grid penalty means a penalty that pushes a driver back on the starting line. Another example, if you get a 5-place penalty and you qualified second, you'll start 7th.
Great examples. Next, let's talk about qualifying session.
In Formula One, the qualifying session is when drivers try to complete a lap as fast as possible to decide their starting position for the race. The faster the lap, the better the starting position.
So Russell and Antonelli were trying to get good starting positions. But they broke a rule during qualifying, so they were given penalties. That's what following rule breaches means.
Exactly. Let's pause and explain rule breaches. A breach means someone broke a rule or didn't follow the correct procedure. Like if your school says don't be late and you arrive after the bell, that's a rule breach.
Or if you're supposed to wear a helmet when riding a bike but you don't, that's another example of a rule breach.
So in summary, both drivers broke a rule during qualifying and now they have to start the race one place farther back than they originally qualified.
That's the big idea in today's news. But you might be asking, who are Russell and Antonelli?
Good question. George Russell is a British Formula One driver who drives for Mercedes, one of the top racing teams in the world. Kimi Antonelli is a young Italian driver, not yet in F1 full-time, but he's expected to be a big name soon.
And the Bahrain Grand Prix? That's one of the races in the Formula One calendar. It takes place in Bahrain, a small country in the Middle East. One of the first races of the season.
Now let's look at some key vocabulary and phrases from the story again, and talk about how to use them in daily English.
Sure. First, grid penalty. This is specific to racing, but we can use penalty in other conversations. For example, I got a late fee penalty on my library book, or there's a penalty for breaking the rules at work.
Another one, qualifying session. You might not use this daily, but qualify is very useful. For example, I qualified for the language competition, or she qualified to enter the next round.
Then we had rule breach. This sounds formal, but it's a good phrase if you work in law or business. Still, we can also just say broke the rules. Like he breached the rule, or more simply, he broke the rule.
Let's rebuild the story using easier words. 2 racing drivers didn't follow the rules during a time when they try to be very fast. Because of that, they are now starting one place behind in the race in Bahrain.
That's it. Now you understand what happened with Russell and Antonelli in the Bahrain Grand Prix, even if you've never watched a race.
And along the way, you learn some new words and how to use them. That's the goal of NeoEnglish.
If you found this episode helpful or interesting, share it with a friend who's also learning English and wants to talk about current events.
Thanks for joining us. See you next time on NeoEnglish, where we learn real English for real conversations.
Bye, everyone.